Hey, this is Alex Burkett, and you're listening to the Long Game Podcast. In this episode, I'm talking with Corey Haines. Corey is the founder of SwipeWell and co-founder of SwipeWell. He's been the head of marketing at companies like Baremetrics and SavvyCal, as well as consulting with dozens of startups. He's currently writing a book on SaaS marketing called Founding Marketing that will be released in 2024. In this conversation, we discuss in-depth programmatic SEO and the nuts and bolts of how he's using it at SwipeWell. We also talked about a real definition of media marketing and why SaaS companies should think like a media company, not be one or build one. And of course, I asked Corey a ton of questions about productivity because he's seemingly doing just an absolutely insane amount of things. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Corey Haines. Well, I wanted to start the discussion with a strange question. So this isn't going to be involved with anything you're currently working on, but more of a character trait. So you mentioned on, I think it was your website or your user manual, I can't remember which one, that you're an Enneagram 3.
Yeah, I think so.
Me too.
Yeah.
So I'm curious.
Probably not uncommon for people that work in tech, especially like marketing and sales, or, more of those like entrepreneurial type of folks.
Well, that's what I was curious about. Is like I've done reflections on how it may have impacted like how I run a company and how I kind of operate. But have you reflected on how this being an Enneagram 3 influences your strengths as an entrepreneur, and more interestingly, your weaknesses?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I think the two highest that I scored in were Enneagram 3 and then Enneagram 1. The 3 is more like the achiever, right? It's sort of like you're motivated by production, by output, by having something to show for at the end of the day, by climbing the mountain, by finishing the thing that you set out to do, right? So it's very like kind of like task oriented, but I think it works for someone like me also who's very optimistic and a little bit more visionary in a sense where I'm always kind of planning for the future and thinking of new ideas and wanting to kind of like live in the future. Essentially, I'm just always trying to get to some other milestone or goal or place in life later down the road. The reason why I also kind of sympathize with the Enneagram 1 is the 1 is a little bit more of like the selfless kind of what's the word I was looking for? More like the person that wants to like serve, and they're more like mission oriented. That's the word I'm looking for. And I definitely have a lot of that as well, where it's not just about like me, I want to achieve, but it's a little bit more like, well, what is this all for? And kind of like the greater good and the bigger picture beyond me. But anyways, the strengths, I think the entrepreneurial side, like, it works for someone who's very autonomous, who knows what they want to do and just wants to go after it and get it done. The weaknesses, one of the big things that I've found is that for a 3, when you're not doing those, like when you're not feeling like you're getting things done all the time, then it can be a very unmotivating period, and you're more prone to like burnout. You're more prone to maybe just kind of like delaying things, procrastinating, juggling too many things at one time, which I'm totally guilty of, because you want to like, you're always chasing that next kind of achievement. So when something is taking a long time and you can't really get that, then you tend to like find it in other areas, or you just kind of skip out it altogether. So that's been something I've had to learn. Is like, okay, just because this thing isn't done yet, you can still enjoy the process of doing the thing instead of just the dopamine rush of having done the thing. And that's the thing I've been trying to learn and improve to make it not so much of a weakness for myself.
Yeah. For me, I've 100% felt that same thing. That driven, like you need a goal, you need a mission, you need something to aim for step by step. And I think the other piece of this maybe is like the Enneagram 3, I believe, also loves recognition and validation and kind of like external validation. Yep. So that's something that I'm kind of working on. But I remember for a time at HubSpot, I was kind of bored. Like I just feel like I wasn't stretched and I didn't have that kind of focus. Now at the agency, it's like I have this singular mission and I can get all of the juice from that. but I started to get really into fitness. Like I was like, cutting and bulking, and like it was so like progression wise, it was so clear because you could see like the pounds on the scale or the pounds that you're putting on the bar in the gym and all of that stuff. But I remember for a period of a year and a half, I was like, that was my autonomous area that I could actually, like fulfill that Enneagram 3 need. And I've actually started to like lean, like I know it can be a weakness, but I've actually started to accept that and be like, okay, I just need healthy outlets for this. It's probably not going to go away entirely, but it's one of those things that if I leverage it correctly, I can actually use it. And, it's like knowing your nature, like what makes you happy versus like trying to fit into somebody else's box.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why try to be someone that you're not? That's just kind of like the inherent nature of being a 3 is you're going to have these tendencies, which can be weaknesses in certain areas. My thing is like, I need to either kind of compensate in another area so that thing doesn't become like an Achilles heel for me, where it just kind of kills everything that I do. It doesn't like hold me back in any way, but I'm not going to try to change that about myself. Like that would just be, it's a pointless thing to try to do. It's just never going to change, right? How am I going to change myself in the way that I'm wired inside?
Right. So on that point, it seems like you're working on an insane, staggering amount of projects. So I'm curious about the things you're working on, but also more so how you manage your time. Like, how do you manage your energy?
Mm-hmm. The short answer is, it's not rocket science. I pretty much just only try to work on deep work types of things, like very minimal meetings, very minimal emails. I'm like allergic to admin type of work. Even pretty minimal like Slack messages. I really just like being in my own lane, giving clear direction, following up on the areas that I need to, and then just getting to work. Now that makes it sound like, oh, I'm just like a workhorse and like a machine. That's not actually true. It's more that like I need to give myself that space in order to actually be productive. Because what I found is if I have like 3 or 4 meetings scattered throughout the day, I'm just not going to get anything meaningful done outside of those meetings within those gap periods. And so I need like full days or long stretches of hours to really be able to crank through things, because otherwise I'm just thinking about the next meeting or unloading from the last meeting. I'm an introvert for sure. And so any meeting kind of takes some energy out of me. So try to batch most of my meetings on Wednesdays, which is the day that we're meeting here today. Mm-hmm. Some of my meetings ended up being on, Mondays. Maybe a meeting here or there will pop up on a Tuesday or a Thursday, but it'll be like 1 at the most. Fridays are always completely kind of my time to have whatever loose ends that I need to. And at the beginning of the week, I make a list. You can see my list right here. It's on a UgMonk analog.
Nice.
Exposure is a little bit crazy. But it's literally just a written list of like, what do I want to do for the week? And these are like high leverage projects, like things that only I can do, things that I'm going to have something to show for, things that I'm going to feel that dopamine rush when I feel like I've done them and I've achieved them. I've conquered the task. And I just kind of pull that list from my list of Notion. I have like a master Notion board of here's all the different projects and tasks associated with them, what needs to be done now. I kind of use the Eisenhower matrix of, urgent and important, and just try to really pick off of like the most important and sometimes the most urgent and work through the list on a weekly basis. And that's kind of it. Like I'm really, really bad at email. I only have like a filter for primary and unread. And if I'll like go through my other tabs and I'll just kind of make sure that something, that should belong in my primary unread isn't in there. But otherwise, like I don't respond to a lot of emails. I don't email people. Like I'm mainly just kind of using it as like a coordination tool for anything. Hey, we have this meeting coming up, or a follow up from an email, from a meeting, something like that. But it's not like a communication tool for me whatsoever.
Right. Do you, with that list that you make every week, do you have any like daily functions? Do you try to do like the one thing, or like every day when you sit down, do you like try to conquer one of those depending on like the theme of the day, or like how do you break it down daily?
No, that would probably be helpful. I don't know. That could be an area that I could be working on. I mainly just work on like, what do I feel an appetite for that day? So sometimes I feel more excited about certain types of tasks and projects than others for whatever reason. Or I kind of start to feel the pressure, and I know, I need to get this done by X date this week. And so I'm going to start working on it now and then start chipping away at it. But honestly, there isn't really any rhyme or reason to it. I kind of just work on what's exciting.
Yeah, driven by your energy.
Yeah. And of course, not everything gives me a lot of energy, but I just try to work on the things I have the most energy for first, because that way I'm not dragging my feet even more on the things that I don't have energy for, thinking about the things that I actually do want to be working on instead.
Yeah, man. It's so funny, like how, like, back to the Enneagram 3 stuff, like knowing your nature is so important. Because I'll find like seemingly easy tasks that once I do them, I'm like, that took like 2 minutes. Why did this feel so painful? But it's like a lot of the admin stuff. We were talking before, I'm moving to New York City. The decision to move was very exciting. The shopping for apartments was thrilling and stressful. But now that I've like gotten a place, it's like all of the little things like, oh, like how do I like coordinate with the moving company or like sell this piece of furniture or like all of those little things, which actually aren't that hard. Like it's genuine, like it's the information's out there. I could chat GPT this stuff. I could pick up the phone, but like for me, like those are the items that sit on my to-do list almost indefinitely, or like reviewing a contract or sending an email or stuff like that. And it's like, I don't know, coming up with a system to at least compensate for those weaknesses while prioritizing the things that actually drive you forward and that you're specifically good at.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I feel the exact same way. It's all the little minutia that ends up holding me back the most. It's the like really big, scary, kind of ambitious projects that I'll just like crank out in a couple of hours, and I'll just, whip it out in no time. I'm thinking about it at night at 11 o'clock before I go to bed. I'm writing notes on my phone and I'm researching things. I'm on Ahrefs on my phone, doing random keyword research. Like that type of stuff is the most exciting and like the most life-giving part of it. It's the little things more on the operational, like execution side, which is kind of ironic. Like I honestly wish it wasn't that way. I feel like my life would be easier if I just loved spreadsheets and getting the details and just, putting my head down and getting that stuff done. But it's the more the like 0 to 1 type of things that I find more fun and exciting.
Yeah, you and me both. So what are the main things you're working on now? SwipeFiles, SwipeWell.
SwipeWell. I also have a full-time job. I'm the head of marketing for a software company. Back in the full-time seat. I was doing a lot of consulting before, and I just kind of found that was spreading me too thin, even though like the goal of doing more consulting was to allow me to spend more time on my side projects so that would then become hopeful full-time projects. But I found that, managing a client and all the comments that come with that, tracking your hours, giving yourself work to do was actually more work than just having a regular job.
Yeah, so, there's significantly more admin work than you would imagine with clients.
Yeah. And it was great. Like my mainstay client was a company called SavvyCal, working with Derek, the founder. We had a really awesome working relationship and achieved a ton together, like a ton. Happy to talk about any of those. But back in the full-time seat so that I can kind of like have some stability and work on SwipeFiles, which is mainly just, honestly, it's on autopilot. Like it's a lot of writing. It's a lot of content creation. There's not a lot to that. Again, I'll feel inspired about something. I was cranking out in a couple of hours, and then kind of that's my work for the week. It's SwipeWell, which is my SaaS side project that's taking the most mind share these days, and the most strategy and the most anxiety how to ramp things up and grow. That's kind of my focus for these days.
Can you explain quickly what each one does or what the premise is?
Yeah. So it is kind of confusing because of the names, which we might do something about it eventually. But SwipeFiles originally started as a weekly teardown of a marketing example from me. And then turns out people just want to hear what I have to say about SaaS marketing. So it became my SaaS marketing newsletter and then membership that has like some courses and other training material inside. SwipeWell is our SaaS tool that's a Chrome extension. It makes it really easy. It's like a one-click tool for screenshots, save landing pages, emails, ads to help you build a swipe file, which is essentially like a digital repository or library of inspiration for you to use within your job. So one's a SaaS tool, one's like a newsletter, but the names are a little bit more like descriptive than I would like.
Do you find, I know that you said SwipeFiles is a little bit more on autopilot, but you've been doing that for longer, correct?
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's
about 3 years now.
I don't know if it's a function of like how long you've been doing it or like if SwipeWell is newer, but like, do you like, is one mode more difficult for you than the other? Like one sounds more content focused. The SaaS sounds more code focused. I'm wondering about the relative difficulty for you.
I mean, with Swipe Files, since I've been doing it for longer, I have so much more built up. Like, honestly, it could be my full-time thing. It's just I wouldn't know what to do if that was my full-time job, because there's just only so many things I can write about and talk about on a weekly basis. And so like the newsletter, I think I have maybe over 130 newsletter editions now. I have 3 different courses. There's a lot of different kind of random training material that's inside. It does a lot of revenue for like sponsorships and revenue affiliates. There's a job board associated with it as well. So again, it just feels like, okay, this thing is taking on a life of its own, and I'm more just kind of helping to steer it and keep it chugging along and refuel it. With SwipeWell, we're so early on. We've been working on it for just over a year now, very much startup mode. The first like 6 months working on a SaaS is mainly just like product management and product development, trying to figure out what do we build and how do we get this thing into people's hands. And so the last 6 months have been more the focus on, all right, now we actually need to get users and customers. And that for me has been the most exciting part, because now I get to actually go and do all the things that I've been doing for other companies, but for my own now. So we're ramping up some content things. We've done some programmatic SEO. We're trying to ramp up some affiliates, some partnerships. I go on podcasts, some cross promotion between Swipe Files as well. But like these days, most of the like content creation that I'm doing is more for SwipeWell right now.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask about the synergies between those two. It sounds like, I mean, it's Swipe Files to me sounds like it could be like the media marketing arm of SwipeWell.
Right? It totally could. Yeah. The only like caveat is that, Swipe Files is very focused on like SaaS marketing, people just looking for, director of marketing or founder or CEO at a SaaS company. Whereas SwipeWell obviously is much broader than that, where in fact, our main kind of target audience is more like agency owners and freelance copywriters, because they're the ones that use inspiration and Swipe Files the most, kind of like the power user persona that we have. And so there's not as much synergy as I would like, but there's still a lot, especially like a great base to pull from for our initial kind of building momentum and getting early feedback, and just having a lot of friends in the space who I can ask to hop on a call and help me test things and give me feedback.
What are you doing for programmatic SEO?
So back in July, I was like, I need to be our biggest power user. I'm going to build like the most comprehensive library of marketing examples out there. So I literally spent a month just like sleuthing the internet and going through vintage ads, SaaS competitor comparison pages, onboarding emails, like everything you can imagine, basically. I think it was over kind of 200 different collections or categories of marketing samples that I was swiping and building a swipe file for. And then I thought, well, what can I do with this? So I asked my co-founder Connor, I was like, hey, could we like publish these as pages on our site and basically like turn my database, like my own account, into kind of like a public swipe file of sorts? And he's like, oh yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, it's all like everything lives on the site, and we use Next.js to like generate our own, marketing site. So like, it's basically all within the app itself, anyways. And so then I started doing some keyword research and realized that I could totally orient all these things that I had swiped, like over 6,000 kind of items, over 200 categories, and basically like map them to all these different keywords, like, SaaS landing pages, D2C landing pages, marketing agency landing pages. And then you take that for a bunch of different kind of head keywords like landing pages, ads, emails, pop-ups, and then all the different variations of that. And I was like, this sounds a lot like programmatic SEO. And I had been familiar with it, but I just never done it at a company before, really, been in the seat driving that forward. And so I started reading a couple articles and I was like, oh, wow, this is actually the perfect opportunity. And so, rejiggered kind of all the titles, the formatting, did some reorganization of like where things should belong. And then we basically just, again, used our own, like my own account to populate pages targeting a keyword variation. So like the kind of, there's a head term and then there's a variant, and then there might be like another variant. So that's how we structured a URL. It'll be like landing pages /SaaS, and then it'd be like ads /SaaS, and then it'd be emails /SaaS. And that allows us to really break up. And it's all under the marketing examples library. So we have over 200 pages generated targeting every one of these keywords that are exactly a good match. SaaS landing pages, D2C landing pages. Just go down the lists, and it spans the gamut. And it was all just kind of populated all at once, because that's the magic of being programmatic. Is you're not writing words, you're generating pages based off of structured data in a sense. And so we're slowly creeping up in the ranks, but that was it took a long time to get that up and running, but it was all based on my own account in SwipeWell.
What I find fascinating is that you seem to have done it the opposite way that most brands do, which I've been loosely involved in some programmatic SEO projects. And usually the way it works is you are expanding from your existing core channels and you're trying to find net new opportunities, higher ceilings. So you start with the opportunity, which usually is represented by keyword research and some sort of an impact audit. And then you find the content. But you had the content and then you stumbled into the opportunity, which I think is better, because a lot of the times programmatic SEO seems to fail because the content lacks depth. It's one of those things where you're like, oh, we have all of this opportunity. There's 200,000 search volume. We could convert users directly from this, spin up a bunch of landing pages that are totally thin, nothing differentiated, and then the project fails. But if you've got the content, that seems like a better position to be in. Yeah,
totally. I think the important thing too is like, a lot of people just come, when they think of programmatic SEO, they probably think of the example that's been touted the most, which is Zapier with their integration pages. That's just one example. And to be honest, I feel like that's the worst example of programmatic SEO, because, well, at least for like B2B SaaS companies, because a lot of other, maybe we might call them SaaS companies, maybe just tech companies in general, have been using programmatic SEO forever. Companies like Zillow and yeah, exactly. There's a bunch of these, Airbnb, a lot of these like product curation and product review sites. So Zapier has kind of followed that a little bit more closely, where programmatic SEO is like an output of just the way that their product worked in the first place, people searching for an integration. You can't take that strategy and plug that into your own company, because that's just not going to work. No one's searching for integrations related to your products, and Zappier's going to eat your lunch anyways. So what is your version for your product that'll work for you? And I found like templates is a good kind of broad category of like, this is broadly applicable to a lot of different type of companies, like form builders and website builders and a lot of the kind of builders type of tools, Canva, design tools, things like that. You also have conversions. We also had a really fun experiment with SavvyCal where we did time zone conversions. But we've seen that across a lot of other things, across like, Wise does currency conversions. You might have like different countries. So you're kind of like, even language conversions, Duolingo, things like that. I've also found comparisons to be a really good one, even like competitor comparisons, because you can kind of split out like, okay, what are the pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses of each of them? And then just mix and match those modules to create pages of, us versus them, or competitor 1 versus competitor 2 versus competitor 3 in a really programmatic way. And then you have curation. I think SwipeWell has mostly followed the curation playbook, which is like, what is a type of content that we're going to curate, and then just split it up and organize it in a way that's conducive for programmatic SEO. So we've taken, ads, landing pages, screenshots, but you might also find, again, products. It could be other types of content like pitch decks or videos. Again, the list goes on and on.
How much custom content creation or editing goes into this stuff outside of the programmatic aspects? Like when you mentioned the comparisons, and if you had like, say, HubSpot versus Marketo, HubSpot versus MailChimp, HubSpot versus ActiveCampaign, I have to imagine that HubSpot description would have to change on each of those pages. Otherwise, it's going to be sort of a duplicate content or like thin content type thing.
Yeah. I think it helps a lot. Like a lot of people don't think about the way to start. Like you kind of start with the page itself. How do you think that the page should be structured in a way that is really informative for the reader, of course, answers all the questions and queries, is going to like hit all the kind of on-page things that you need to actually rank for the keyword, but then literally map it out in like a wireframe on the page. And you'll find, okay, these pieces are going to be reusable blocks across any other page. And then these pieces are going to be unique to this page. And then that also allows you to further split it out and say, okay, for this page, these are the pieces that we need to fill in the customize. And now we can have like a custom blurb about, I think like intercom, there was the Drift versus the intercom page that was pretty famous about, they just have this like block of text right in the top of the page. It's kind of just like, hey guys, like here's our approach. We think intercom's great, but if you're this type of person, and you can redo that for every one of your competitors, but then you go down the list and you just do kind of your checklist style comparison, and that's going to be reusable across any other competitor, right? So I think it's actually pretty scalable to mix. Like everything doesn't have to be these completely reusable programmatic blocks. You can also have customizable blocks. And some parts that are even maybe unique to the page, we just kind of like add it in. We use Webflow a bunch, and I've used Webflow for some other programmatic experiments. And Webflow is really great for just like turn this part on for these pages, turn this off for those pages, filtering, and like you literally just have like a checkbox like include or not include, and that allows you to like customize a page without like adding in a new, basically like a new heading or a new section of a page manually. You can just click a box within the CMS.
This is like a custom object of sorts where it's like you write it, you create it centralized, and then you can kind of like use it in a modular way throughout like whatever pages on the site.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's cool.
And you can map CMS collections together. So that's, you have like these relational databases of sorts, right? And now it's not just, well, here's one database that I'm organizing in a very binary way of yes, no, is this included or not? But it's related to another database and even a third database for things like tags or filters or other things that allows you even more flexibility for the pages you can create.
Do you think generative AI is going to dilute the value of programmatic SEO because everybody's going to mass create just like spammy type pages now that it's more functionally possible?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's a nice little like hack and shortcut for, those little short customizable pieces that you want to include, and you just need to kind of whip something up quickly. Personally, I don't know about you. I've been using generative AI for like more like rewriting my content rather than like coming up with the content in general. And so that's also been my approach too, is like, instead of me just copy and pasting the same blurb across all these different ones, I'll have generative AI like go through and kind of customize it and just have a different version for each one so that it's a little bit more unique. But it's probably a little bit inevitable that it's just going to water everything down. But also increases like, it makes the bar higher. So when you do hurdle that bar, then it's noticeable.
That's the thing with everything else though. It's like programmatic SEO is the obvious use case, but then it's also like stuff people share on LinkedIn. Like it's going to be a lot of ChatGPT content there, which just makes it more valuable when you create something unique and novel and like, specific to you. Same thing with blogging. It's going to be one of those things where if everybody can click a button, create content, they will, but that's going to dilute any competitive advantage among those people who are doing that. So it's like the ones who will rise to the top are going to be the ones who have that little extra special sauce.
And I actually think like, if I really think about programmatic SEO type of content versus kind of editorial thought leadership type of content, I think that the editorial thought leadership is more at risk for this kind of copycat generative AI, really diluted, bland content than programmatic SEO, because the programmatic type of content is inherently more cut and dry and factual. And it's more about, well, what am I curating? What am I creating that is modular and a little bit more structured in a way that there's no point in even trying to use generative AI to do this thing, right? I'm just kind of organizing data that I already have. I don't need AI to generate it for me. I'm just going to go and structure it in a way that's conducive for, programmatic content, right? So, in that sense, it's maybe less at risk. It's more about like the execution and the customization of that content if you want to raise the bar even further.
Yeah. Do you think, are there any technical foundational underpinnings that need to be in place in order to make programmatic SEO work. I would assume a certain domain rating or backlinks would have to be present, internal linking, stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think page structure, things like you need all of your on-page SEO stuff to just be on point. I mean, we found a bunch of different issues when we first launched we call it the marketing examples library within SwipeWell, where we're finding, okay, we need to have like a really good, sitemap. We need to submit our XML, file multiple times. We need to request to be indexed multiple times. We need to get rid of our 404s. We need to fix this. We need to fix that. Like, there's just a lot of things you have to really button up in order to give yourself the best chance of ranking. But yeah, I mean, that's also the thing. Like, SwipeWell is brand new. I mean, our domain rating was probably like a 10 when we launched it. And so for me, it was also an experiment. Like, how successful can this be with a really low domain rating? Since then, it's grown, and I've done some active kind of link building campaigns in order to try to beef that up. But it's for sure capped. Like, I think our domain rating now is maybe like a 35 or something. It's still not high whatsoever. We're getting close to that more like authoritative threshold, but it's definitely going to be limited. It's going to be capped unless there's just like zero competition whatsoever for whatever the keywords that they're ranking, and the content is just absolute garbage. We found like the reality is for SwipeWell, SaaS landing pages, that keyword is pretty competitive. There are other pages that do a good job of curating content. So again, the bar is higher for us to have to compete. So yeah, of course, domain rating and backlinks and all the on-page SEO details are going to be more important in that scenario.
Gotcha. So I feel like programmatic SEO is on one side of the spectrum. This is a very this is a growth marketers kind of thing. And then one thing that you mentioned on the intake form and on your website was that you believe SaaS companies should aim to do marketing like media companies. So I look at that as almost the other end of the spectrum, where it's a little bit less direct attribution, direct last click oriented. It's a little bit more brandy. For me, it's a little more wishy-washy. So one, I would love to have you explain to me why you think SaaS companies should do the media company thing. And two, if you're including anything like that in your plans to kind of balance that portfolio for SwipeWell from the pure programmatic conversion oriented to the brand side, if you believe in that dichotomy.
No. Oh, totally. And I love the question. So I phrased it I was very, very carefully. It's marketing like a media company. It's not make a media company and that is your marketing team. Because that's totally the mistake. And the first thing that people think about is, oh, well, I have to hire journalists and YouTubers, and we need to be like, we have to make it an entirely separate brand. It's like, no. Market like a media company. Think like a media company. Do marketing as if you were a media company. Because really what I mean by that is two things. Think about your content like it's the product that you sell. So if you're a media company, what is it that you sell? Well, you're really selling ad slots on content, but your content has to be so good in order to get eyeballs to those ad spots, right? So really what you produce, what the thing is that you sell is content. Your content has to have a high bar. It has to be the thing that you're really focused on. And I see content as the cornerstone of every marketing strategy, and really just marketing as a whole. I think that's the core of what marketing is. Content is so many different things. It's entertainment, it's educational, it's fun, it's inspiring, it's the brand look, it's the brand voice, it's the representation of your company more broadly, right? Sales is that relational, personal, one-to-one representation of the company. Marketing is the one-to-many representation of the company. There's no better way to do that than through content. Now, the second part of that, of what it looks like to market like a media company, is think about who is at the core of a media company. And it's media personalities. It's the people creating the content themselves. So this is one of the other things is people think, well, if I'm going to market like a media company, then I'll just go and hire a bunch of freelance writers and we'll just create a bunch of content and I'll just outsource everything, video, audio, written, et cetera, et cetera. Well, at that point, you're missing the point, because the point is not just prolific output. The point is who it's coming from. It's to build authority, it's to build trust, it's to become a destination for people where they're not just thinking through, I'm not going to read any old blog, I'm going to listen to any old podcast. I'm going to read or listen to the content from people that I know and trust and who I want to listen to. So again, I mean, this is why some of the cornerstone examples of marketing like a media company are HubSpot acquiring The Hustle. I think Wistia is a fantastic example. ProfitWell has done a fantastic job. But even companies like Coinbase, I would say, is one of them. There's been quite a few other SaaS companies that have started to make these inroads where you're really putting people on a pedestal to represent the company as these larger than life personalities. They're the people authoring the content. They're the ones showing up on the podcasts. They're the ones doing the interviews, and they're becoming someone trustworthy. You're trying to make someone kind of famous in a small circle, right? Or even a group of people. Drift did this really exceptionally well. They were the pioneers. So of course, hindsight's 2020 for what they were doing, but they had multiple people. I mean, Dave Gerhardt's original intention for the Seeking Wisdom podcast was for it to just be an outlet for David Cancel, because David didn't have time to go and write blog posts and things like that. So he's like, okay, let's just hop on a podcast and start recording. And then became this phenomenon that also helped elevate Dave Gerhardt as the marketing thought leader, which serves really well for, MarTech like Drift. So he's creating LinkedIn videos and he's going to other podcasts and they're expanding the podcast network. And then they're bringing other people like Maggie Crawley, who's their product manager turned podcast host. And again, more like the product, the product thought leader for the more technical audience of Drift, more like product managers and growth PMs, and even just developers who are the ones implementing Drift at the back end, right? So they're expanding their audience, but they're also, again, they're becoming a destination for people. So when you treat content like a product and you have great people who are being elevated, creating that content, now you're marketing like a media company. And we can get to all the nuances of that, but like that's the core of what I mean when I say market like a media company.
You opened up a bunch of avenues for me here. I'm really interested in the passion and in what you were talking about. Mainly the point that I want to make is that I'm big on like the who behind the content. I think that's going to be incredibly important, especially in the AI era. But even before then, it was like the trust that you'd built up. So we've been calling this thing decentralized content. And essentially, instead of centralizing everything on the blog, maybe having a byline that is like company team, right? Like you do build individual thought leaders. They distribute their content effectively through social, through YouTube, whatever the kind of channel of choice is, right? Yes. But you're enabling them via your platform. And I think that's incredibly effective right now. We've seen that with Drift. We've seen that with Gong. We've seen that with a ton of agencies and consulting firms. The thing is, there's two things I worry about. And this is coming from somebody who believes in this. I believe it's effective. One is the inherent chaos of trying to build and contain kind of like brand points of view, messaging, because a lot of the effectiveness of marketing seems to come from repetition and really honing in on a message as opposed to having like kind of multiple nodes speaking about different things. And the other thing, this is probably a silly thing to worry about, but when the person that you've built up leaves, there's not as much compounding value like you would get with, say, SEO or something that kind of like, if a writer leaves HubSpot's blog, like the HubSpot blog still capitalizes on the work that they put in. Whereas when Dave leaves Drift, it's like, does Dave's value still lend to Drift's marketing efforts? And like, I had that with, I guess this is different, but like when I was at CXL, I felt like that was a very good platform for me to build my own voice and thought leadership, and people started to read my columns. They still get the SEO juice from that. So I think like that value is still there. But I wonder, it's like if you're building up social thought leaders on LinkedIn and maybe a podcast, like when they leave, is that a risk? So I guess those are the two things. And I don't know how you think about those.
Both totally valid. Absolutely. So on the first one, I think that one of the things that I've realized that I've had to step into this role myself is you absolutely need an editor type of role. That person can be the director of marketing. It could be like your content marketing manager. It could even be someone else. I don't know. It could be anyone that you feel has the control and the opinion and the bandwidth to take all these different people creating disparate types of content and run it through a filter, a singular filter, which should be an editor. So I found that running that through one person who can kind of be like the brand voice keeper, the content keeper of sorts, works really well. Because yeah, again, like you said, otherwise things start to get a little bit out of control. You do need to rein people in and say, well, that was a cool idea for content, but that's not really conducive for the people that we want to reach, or the types of things that we sell in our business. So why don't we refocus it back over here, right? So you definitely have to have some guidelines and then keep people within those guidelines. So I think having an editor is absolutely critical. And I talk about, ways that you can market like a media company when you just want to crawl versus walk versus run. Everyone wants to start running immediately, but they don't even have like the resources to go and execute on that. And most of the time, they don't even have the resources to walk either. To me, what it looks like to crawl is you have like one person who becomes kind of the face of content, or the person you want to put up on the pedestal, and you're choosing like one other main content outlet. And then when you're walking, you might have one person, two people, three people across 1 to 3 different channels. And then when you're running, you might have a lot more. And at that point, running really requires that editor role. But you can get away without it for a while if you're not at that point yet. On the second point, sorry, remind me what it was.
This was more so the risk of somebody leaving. Oh, yeah. So right. If you've gotten used to like Dave Gerhardt's voice at Drift, and he moves on to Privy or does his own thing, like does Drift still get the value of like building up that voice within the company?
The short answer is no. And that's kind of just the reality of it. If you've done such a good job that losing them would be a big hit to the company, then like try to keep them. I don't know what else to tell you, but it's like, you think about, again, marketing like a media company, treat your content like it's a product, and then build up people to become personalities creating that content. Well, think about news anchors, and think about reporters and journalists. Think about anyone within a traditional media company who is doing a really good job. They end up creating a lot of leverage for themselves to stay within that company, because they're both incentivized to keep doing what they're doing because it's working so well. And so I think that, it's a question of retention. If that person wants to leave, why do they want to leave? Well, can you offer something better for them to allow themselves to keep growing and keeping incentivized to have that mutually beneficial relationship for that content within your company? If not, then you have to go. And now you need to start building up the next person. Of course, it always helps to have kind of a pipeline of maybe next people in line. Again, that might be a luxury for people at the run stage and who have a very large team and a lot of amazing talent to draw from. But the reality is, I think it's more just a question of, it is a bummer if people leave. How can you keep them? If they try to leave, think ahead. How can you incentivize them to keep going? I think about people at the Hustle. You had this kind of like Hustle crew that came out with like Steph Smith and Trunk Fan and Alex Garcia, even a couple other people that I know got amazing jobs elsewhere and sort of are even just now kind of building up their social presence. And maybe they could have done a better job of keeping those folks. I don't know if they've really felt the losses of them. They've all gone on to do great things, but maybe that it could have kept doing great things within the Hustle and HubSpot. I don't know.
I think that's the game, though. I think it's one of those things where like that's the tax you pay in this modern environment. Because I remember a couple of years ago, or I don't exactly remember when this happened, but there was a debate within news organizations. There was a debate, with the Atlantic and New York Times and companies like that, where the old model was to sort of subsume the identities of the writers and the voices under the brand. Right. Mm-hmm. When social came out, it was like there was a disincentivization from, the brands themselves, where they were saying, I don't want you to build your own platform. But that became the effective model. So it's like now everybody's doing it. And it's like now the Atlantic, I read the Atlantic for Derek Thompson's columns or Arthur C. Brooks. Like I know the authors. And if they go to Substack, because that's better for them and their future, I'm probably going to go read them there as well. And that's just inherently how most of us look at these media companies now. So I feel like I do agree with you. It's it's maybe not ideal for the brand, but it's like you can't bend the universe to your will just because it's not in your favor, the current way that consumers consume information.
Mm-hmm. I will say, I mean, the one big caveat, and maybe the way to get around this, where you can have your cake and eat it too, is to focus most of that attention on someone within the founding team or leadership team. It's going to work the best, most long term when it's the founder, CEO, CTO, chief, whoever, VP of whatever. Because again, those people are more bought in long term anyways. There is less risk of them leaving. So yeah, if you had your druthers and you had your choice between who can we help build up to be these media personalities, my first choice would always be someone within the senior leadership team.
They're also the keepers of the messages, and they often have implicit, unspoken points of view that people who are new to the company definitely aren't going to have, which is maybe where that centralization risk that I talked about before comes in. But we're doing this thing now as part of our strategy engagements. In addition to the keyword research and the typical models with SEO agencies, we're doing what we call a brand POV exercise. And it's essentially trying to map out like the themes, the villains, and the angles of your brand. So these map down from like the positioning. It's not quite a style guide. It's really like what people are talking about in your industry and what your take is on those things. And what I found is getting the CEO or the founder in the room is a huge value, because otherwise everybody's sort of trying to guess what they're trying to guess what the CEO would say. But it's when it's straight from their mouth, it's like, they learn things they didn't even know that they could have spoken about. So I think even from a messaging angle, that's pretty critical. And you're right. They're less likely to jump ship from their own ship.
Yeah. And that's why it's great to partner with, to work for or partner with a CEO who gets marketing and who gets content and who's bought into this idea, because they know the importance of having a point of view, having opinions, being able to see the market and the industry, and be able to really give it that extra oomph for the content that it needs in order to build up their own social presence, where it's not just, I have a writer ghostwriting something for me and it has my name on it, so it's better. It's like, no, I'm going to add my own kind of special magic dust on top of this, and I'm even maybe going to direct it and be the originator of the idea for this content. Maybe I'll create some of it, maybe I'll outsource some of it as well. But when you have someone who really gets that, then it just brings it up another notch. Again, like the bar gets higher, and it's just going to be more successful when the CEO knows that, and it's not just a chore.
What drives you to take on these new projects? What's the impetus behind, SwipeFiles, SwipeWell? You've done a bunch of podcasts too. You're writing a book. Like what?
Yeah.
What makes you want to go 0 to 1 on all these projects?
Mm-hmm. My goal has always been start a SaaS company, start and run a SaaS company. That's always been my end goal. Everything else, as maybe like demeaning as this sounds, is a means to an end. Not just like a selfish, like, I'm just going to, step on people left and right just to help get to like the platform that I want to get to. But again, think about like SwipeFiles, the newsletter, the book, the courses, the other projects and random side projects that I do. I feel that those are all like reps, and they're for me to learn for when I have my SaaS company of my own. But two, they're also the output of things that I'm learning in order to start and run a successful SaaS company. So, everything is just in the lens of like this end goal of trying to start and run a successful SaaS company that's growing and profitable and employs people. That's the vision and the dream for me. And everything else is sort of subservient to that personally.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're doing it. How long has that been your goal, or like where did that come from?
Yeah. If we want to go all the way back, like I was never very entrepreneurial until one of my friends in high school was very entrepreneurial. And we were on a little road trip to see some friends in college, and got to talking. He's telling me about all his plans. He's going to go do this, start this company, blah, blah, blah. He wants to get on that. He listens to this podcast, reads that book. And then he asked me what I want to do. I had a very traditional upbringing, and really my worldview was very small. So my answer was a pretty quintessential freshly graduate of high school. Well, I just want to get a good job in like accounting or finance and start a family and retire one day. Like that was it. And he literally said, that's it. Like that's all that you want to do. And honestly, there is nothing wrong with that. But that was the first time that anyone had ever challenged my goals and my worldview. And what do I want to do? I never really thought like, what do I want to do? It was more just, what do I have to do in order to survive? And so then he put me onto all these, books and podcasts. I started reading 4-Hour Workweek, and that got me to Mixergy. And then I found the world of tech, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I actually love this. And just inspired so much in me that by the time I was around 19, I kind of knew like, all right, everything I'm going to do is in order for me to start a company. I didn't know I wanted to start a SaaS company until I started working in SaaS, which is my first job out of college. And then I realized like, this is awesome. I love this. It's the best business in the world. And this is like the ikigai of all the things that I'm interested in and good at, could be paid for, and want to work on day to day.
What was that word?
Ikigai.
Yeah.
People pronounce it different ways. It's ikagi, ikigai. It's the like Venn diagram of 4 different intersections of, what the world needs, what you're good at, what you can get paid for, and what's like personally fulfilling to you, or something like that. It's at least kind
I've seen those graphs. I never do that word. That's interesting.
Yeah. So SaaS is just such a fun like intersection of all the things that I love and I'm interested in, like I'm good at on the marketing side of things. And so since around 19, I kind of knew like I wanted to start a business. That was my end goal. And then when I started working in SaaS, like I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do.
That's cool. I resonate with that. I have this budding theory of entrepreneurship that everybody who is an entrepreneur like subjects themselves to that has almost like an angel and a devil on their shoulder. And it's like you need both of those. So it's like the devil would be like the chip on your shoulder. There's something in you that wants to prove to people that you can do it. And I think that's necessary. People don't talk about that a lot. But then the other side is equally important, if not more so. It's that person who is supportive, but in a way that challenges you. It's not just supportive, like, oh, you're good, you're cool. It's like, no, I see more in you than you see in yourself. And it's like, if you have those two pieces, I feel like that's the puzzle. If you're interested in entrepreneurship, of course. I mean, there's other routes that you can take, but I see that commonality a lot of the times with people who start their own things.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people, that initial friend was definitely that challenger who was like, dude, you could do so much more. And have you ever even thought about this or that or this other thing? I was very subdued and shy and insecure, and just had no idea even like how to think about myself. And that really unlocked this kind of exploration of what am I good at and what do I want to do? What am I interested in? And really just doing like a lot of kind of natural, unintentional self-reflection that helped me butt into the person. Like I never would have thought I would be like the marketing and sales guy. I thought it maybe even be more like the engineer type. Now I know like I'm still an introvert, but I love talking to people. I love teaching. I love creating content. And I don't have the brains to be an engineer. I'm just not, I just don't. I could probably learn it one day, like a little bit of it, but I'm never going to be the like back-end database guy that's just like super nerding out on architecture and all this kind of other stuff, right? It's just, that's not the level that I'm at. So it's definitely been like a journey for me, just coming into my own, having people like that, just being, okay, you can do this. No, bro, you can do it. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And then there's a chip on my shoulder, of course, for me, just wanting to prove to myself and make it actually happen. But there's probably like two or three core people in my life who have been those kind of challengers, encouragers, and doing the same thing as well, like alongside you, where they're starting businesses and they're also entrepreneurial.
Because then you can see it's possible too.
Yeah, you see what's possible. You can trade notes. You get the inside scoop on what it's actually like and what's going on behind the scenes. And it just makes it feel more real, where then something that scared you before, you were like, I have no idea how to do this or what happens or even what's involved. And someone else can go through and learn all those hard lessons for you and be like, oh, dude, it's not a big deal. All you have to do is X, Y, and Z. Okay, cool. Now I feel less anxiety about that and I have more confidence to go out and get after it.
Yeah. We might have to do a part 2 because I actually wanted to ask you a bunch about your book and the topics within that, but
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to have time. So we're coming up on time, but I wanted to make sure that there was a moment to ask if there's anything that we didn't talk about that you think we should have, or anything you additionally wanted to mention.
Shoot, man. We've really covered a lot here. I think, yeah, I'd love to talk about the book another time. That maybe just a final note on that has just been the writing process, what that's like. Again, me being like the champion of treat content like it's your product, and like a book is literally a product that is content. And it's been a grind to actually get out and do, but it's been a lot of fun as well. I'm about 80% done with the manuscript, so maybe next time we talk, I'll have a finished version and I can actually start talking about it and promoting it.
This will come out in a couple months. Do you want to mention the book title?
Sure. Yeah, the book is called Founding Marketing. You can actually go to the waitlist. It's at foundingmarketing.com. And it's a practical guide to early SaaS growth.
Nice. And what else do you want to mention? Where can people find you online?
Yeah, you can find me at my personal site, corey.co. There's lists of all the things that I'm working on, swipefiles.com, swipewell.app. Find me on Twitter at Corey Haines Co. I'm on Twitter the most.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This conversation was super fun.
All right. Thanks a bunch.